Murder of this former judge and the bigger picture of growing crime across the country. Let's bring in former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Always good to have you back. Thank you, Matt.
Hi, Shannon. Good to be with you.
Okay, so I want to read a little bit about what we're learning. In Fox News, our headline, former Wisconsin County judge killed in targeted attack on judicial system. According to reports, it says the station said a law enforcement official told them that a hit list was found in the vehicle of the male suspect, which included the names you've seen there: Governor Evers, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. At last I heard this guy had a self-inflicted wound but was still alive. I don't know if that's still the case late tonight. But clearly he was motivated to go after people across the political spectrum. And this judge had been retired since, I think, 2017. At what point do we, provide enough protection for the people who've served this country in whatever role?
Yeah, and this is a sad story, but also it demonstrates the vulnerability, especially of our state court judges. But, I think a lot of this can be looked through at a lens where the politicians, especially our representatives in Congress, sort of act as if their veiled threats against the judiciary, if they don't rule their way, is going to just be viewed as political rhetoric. I mean, I think of Chuck Schumer standing in front of the Supreme Court talking about how Kavanaugh and other justices had released the whirlwind. And I think that kind of political rhetoric crosses a line. It's dangerous, and it creates a culture where individuals think that they can seek their own justice in these types of situations.
So let's talk about the federal level, because this is something you'll obviously be more expert at than the rest of us. But the DOJ put a press release out about these continuing, ongoing demonstrations that continue outside of Supreme Court justices' homes as we await the abortion decision. DOJ back on May 18th said this. I want to be clear. This is quoting the Attorney General Merrick Garland. While people vote, argue, and debate in a democracy, we cannot allow violence or unlawful threats of violence to permeate our national life. The Justice Department will not tolerate violence or threats of violence against judges or any other public servants at work, home, or any other location. So that very specifically says no threats of violence and no violence. But we all know, and we keep talking about the fact that there is a law on the books that says you cannot go protest at a judicial officer or judge's or juror's home in order to influence a decision. And yet there have been zero arrests, which seemed like it would be a simple thing for the DOJ to do to send a very clear message.
You're exactly right, and I'm surprised that they haven't, like they do oftentimes in other ways, push out a perimeter outside of the immediacy of their homes, because as you know, a mob that's assembled can quickly turn, and if the Dobbs decision comes out and a group in front of a justice's house hears the outcome, that's a dangerous situation. And so I think obviously this DOJ is concerned about free speech. We all should be concerned about the limits of free speech. But at the same time, I think an angry mob in front of a justice's house, to me, seems like a threat.
Well, we'll see about that as they continue and we await that decision. The clock is ticking. I want to talk more broadly about what's going on with rising crime across the country. USA Today puts it this way: deadliest weekend in the U.S. for mass shootings this year. 3 days, many guns, 17 fatalities. They talk about at least 17 people were killed Friday to Sunday, the deadliest weekend of mass shooting violence this year. They cite Philadelphia, Chattanooga, Saginaw, Omaha, and other towns and cities. At least a dozen shootings that killed or injured 4 or more people. At least 82 people were wounded or killed. So quickly, Matt, why aren't we taking more action with respect to these, as we should with, in addition to the mass shootings at places like Uvalde and in Buffalo, which are absolutely heartbreaking. But this is something that's happening every weekend on some scale in this country.
You're right, and we've seen it in our major cities for actually quite some time. There's been a lot of gang violence that's been either ignored or law enforcement's had an inability to suppress it. Obviously, these horrific mass shootings we had in Uvalde, in Buffalo, and they seem to continue, are heartbreaking. And the American people are expecting their leaders to do something. But what we've ended up here with now is a situation where prosecutors are no longer putting people away for maximum sentences. Law enforcement is beleaguered, after the defunding messaging over the last couple of years after the summer of 2020. And so, in my sense is we need to get back to the basic blocking and tackling of law enforcement, and that is putting bad guys that pull triggers and kill people in jail and making sure they stay in jail. And many of the crimes you mentioned at the beginning of this segment were in New York City, which has its major law enforcement challenges right now.
Yeah, and God bless our officers who are out there trying to protect us in the midst of all of these
Absolutely.
challenges. Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon. Great to see you.
You too.